Where are the Knicks going? Which young talent should we be excited about? Can they actually figure it out and get good? The only question left is, say it with me, you win. Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the BBall Breakdown Podcast. I am pleased to have in studio John Henson. However, it might not be the John Henson that you think. He's a lot shorter than the one you might be picturing that plays in the NBA. But we have a John Henson who has been on TV and is a Knicks fan. And so, John, thank you for coming all the way down to the studio.
Look, I got to be honest. It's good to be back here. There's some great memories.
There is.
Studio.
We've sat on the couch together. We've streamed live together.
Yeah. I've overserved myself pizza in this in this little house.
Yeah, as I have too. I've watched it, and it's exciting to see. So you could go back and watch it. It's on YouTube somewhere. Our interactions watching whatever. It was a Knicks game, I'm assuming, that we watched. I'm sure.
Well, we also did some TNT games, right? We did some Tuesday or Thursday games, midweek games.
Yeah, we did. Without question, we did at least a couple times. So check that out. But we're here to talk about the Knicks a little bit because it's an obsession of yours.
Yep.
Why?
I guess because I'm hard-headed, and I've now got my 7-year-old son rooting for the Knicks, which, as I like to say, is borderline child abuse. I mean, it's a really cruel thing to do to a child who literally looked at me a couple of weeks ago and goes, "Dad, how come we don't win any games?"
Well, you can't ask that question now because they're winning some games. I was in New York. I watched the Spurs and I watched the Magic play them and lose in very exciting fashion.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm having a sort of have my cake and eat it today because they've won a couple of games lately, and yet we have a half a game lead on the Suns for the Zion tankathon.
Well, here's the problem with tanking these days: is they changed the rules. I don't know if a lot of Knicks fans know this or not.
People don't, and it is, in my opinion, one of the only rule changes in pursuit of parity in the league that actually is going to have an impact, right? Because it's just about math. Because people are walking away from the Supermax contract like there's no tomorrow. Because what's the difference between 190 and 240 million when you're that wealthy? But, now it's even odds for the bottom three teams. It went from, 87% to 14 and change?
Yeah, it's really low in a way that there isn't necessarily a maximizing of that thing because even if you're a fourth worst team, your odds are not that far away from 14%, whatever it is, either. Yeah. So it's going to be a real crapshoot. And I think it's just simply going to take a few years for teams to really figure that out and not tank or whatever they're going to do to make that happen.
Oh, it's. I think it's really the bottom 5 picks are all largely in the same bag, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, numerically, mathematically, there's not an enormous chasm of difference, but it is. It is a real concern for Knicks fans because if we can find a way to lose that draft, we will.
Hey, we all know what happened with Ewing,
right? That's why I'm hoping that Stern is having lunch with Adam Silver and going, here's what you do. You put the envelope in the freezer, you bend the corner of it, you fish around until you find it. You know what I mean? Trust me on this.
Yeah, trust your feelings. There's no question. The worry, you saw the Zion, little injury, right?
Believe me, there was some wailing and gnashing of teeth at my house until that came back as a sprain because I was like, no.
And he hasn't played again, right? I don't think did they talk about
I think he's shutting it down.
Is that right? I mean, he probably should, right? He shouldn't play any more games.
If I were him, you're asking 285 pounds of torque on a, Nike made in China sneaker. With the amount of money he's got on the table, I think a lot of people would be advising him to shut it down, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, there's a whole notion of, you're part of a team and yada, yada. This is, your last chance to be a college kid or whatever. But you're right. He has an insurance policy, so he would get $8 million or whatever I think is what that policy
but
would be,
after taxes.
Yeah, right, depending on what state you're living in.
Sure.
Too. So, yeah, okay, fair enough. So I agree. I think it should be shut down. And I just feel like they have to, you don't want to eliminate the college being the minor leagues for the NBA. But the funny thing is about all that, and just a quickie, would be that the rules are trying to address for the one and dones and all that stuff. It only applies to 10 players every year.
Right.
20 players out of the 400 or whatever, 1,000, I don't know how many there are. Let's see, there's 300 and some, almost 400 Division I NBA or Division I college teams. 15 players on a team. Like, it really doesn't affect hardly anybody, and yet
right.
we're all gnashing our teeth over what we're going to do about, the rules and whether they should get paid and all this different stuff. So it's a real interesting, conundrum wrapped in something with this guy. But at any rate, Knicks fans, they all want Zion. What happens if they don't get Zion? What's going to happen? They're gonna...
Well, that kid at number 2, Zion's teammate who's picked up his scoring so much in the absence of it. What's his name?
Brandon Ingram 2.0 or whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, that kid is a wonderful consolation prize. Some people talk about Ja Morant. I think there's a pretty big drop-off from the second pick to the next sort of batch of guys. That's my read. I'm not a big college basketball player. I'm just sort of consuming other people's analysis, but that's the way it seems. I think people, even if they were to determine that Zion is not the most talented player in the draft, they would take him anyway just for the ticket sales.
Sure. Now, but how soon everybody forgets the Porzingis draft and how there were kids weeping at that pick.
I was one of those kids. No, not at the pick, at the trade. I mean, look, that was I've been very upfront about how hard I took that. To me, I think, in my mind, that was a case of, I put a lot of that on his brother, Giannis, who is his manager, who supposedly was asking for control over personnel moves. But look, I just think, and this is, I don't even pretend to be objective, right? But when I look at that whole situation, a guy who, when he was drafted, claimed, he always dreamed of being a Knick, like starting after season 2, we essentially rolled over the entire front office in effort to make him happy. We're offering him a max contract. He sits out for an entire year and then requests a trade when his trade value is at its lowest. It bothers me because even as much as I loved him as a Knicks fan, I would have to admit, if pressed, I would build around Antetokounmpo, I would build around Embiid, I would build around Anthony Davis, I would build around Towns, before I would build around Porzingis. Like, part of me is like, dude, you don't have it like that. You're a 7'3" guy coming off of an ACL injury. There is no frame of reference. Part of the thing that made you special is your athleticism, your first step. You don't want to play center, so now you're stuck, chasing stretch fives, which we saw for the last 2 seasons has a catastrophic defensive impact. He's not good at chasing stretch fives. Takes him away from the basket. His big thing with rim protection is help defense. Like, there's a lot of issues there. He was not a sure thing the way, somebody like Embiid certainly appears to be now, barring a health issue. So I just sort of think, you know what, man, you're dead to me now.
Okay. I'm just thinking, because remember, when he was drafted, everyone was really upset, and yet he became, a terrific player, and everyone was happy about it. So I'm wondering if they don't get Zion, maybe you guys should just remember, hey, maybe somebody else you don't want, maybe better or good for you too. And that could happen.
It's an important lesson for us to learn. I also think, in addition to a very tantalizing and what will inevitably be a very entertaining duo in Luka and KP, the Mavs, they got $30 million in cap space, but they got a lot of rebuilding to do. You know what I mean? It's not like all of a sudden the Mavs are going to be, in second or third in the West next year because of this trade. Like, they have an uphill battle in terms of building a team around him.
They do, although, if things progress and he does come back healthy, the prospects of having 2 Euro people being, the top 2 players on the team that lead them to the top of the conference I like the narrative. I think Cuban's onto something there. But you're right. It won't, maybe not next year, but, and also have to wait for some of these other teams to kind of finally fizzle out a little bit. So we'll see. And while some of the top teams in the league will eventually fizzle out and start losing, it doesn't mean your sexual performance has to do the same. You might have gotten to that age where you realize the engine needs a little tune-up, and that's where ED treatment from Hims can save you. 4hims.com is the one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness for men. Avoid the awkward doctor's visits where you gotta tell some person in a white coat your deep personal secrets. Hims can prescribe and deliver right to your door. And right now, the first month is just $5. I'll get you started for just $5 while supplies last and subject to doctor approval. Restrictions apply. See website for full details. This could cost hundreds if you went to a doctor or pharmacy. Go to 4hims.com/Coach Nick. That's FORHIMS.com/Coach Nick now, and you'll save money, look and feel better, and perform your best. Hims. It's hard, made easy. Speaking of the draft, and if we had to redo the draft this year from last year, what is Mitchell Robinson? Where is he going at this point?
Again, I don't claim to be objective. I think you got to put him in the top 10.
Yeah. Wait, where was he drafted again? Now that I'm
His second round.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's got to be.
And I think it was like mid-second round. Like he was in the, I don't know, maybe the late 20. Well, where would he have been?
If we only had a way to type something in and check it out, but here we go. As we fire it up here. I mean, you're right. He is, there it is. There's the draft. Let's see. Robinson. Jerome Robinson. Mitchell Robinson was drafted 36th.
36th, okay? Yeah. Now, this is a guy who's, prior to this season, his last competitive game was not only a calendar year before the draft, it was in high school. Mm-hmm. I mean, and now you look at him. Now, granted, I mean the guy's basically a dunking machine, right? He's not shooting outside of shallow water, right? However, you would have to say he has at least the motor and body to be a potential defensive player of the year stalwart. I mean, this guy's blocking per 36. I think towards the end of last week, he was averaging 5.6 blocks per 36. It's insane.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I was in New York at the Garden, which, by the way, they've done an amazing job. I hadn't been to the Garden since 1991, but whatever. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place to see. It is the Mecca. And I'm watching him play, and he's literally blocking every shot. And if he's not blocking it, he's almost blocking every shot. And it was funny because on the way out in the bowels of the stadium, we happened to be in the same elevator, and I just turned to him. I'm like, "Are you trying to block every shot?" He goes, "That's the idea."
I think he's got the second most three-pointers blocked this season. And that's a guy who's coming from under the basket.
Yeah.
The other guy, I'm trying to think of who it is somebody out on the perimeter. I mean, this guy is slapping three-pointers into the stands. It's absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's so long. And so I was talking to some other people about what his ceiling is because, as the game progresses, we don't, I don't even know if we need Embiid to be lead a title team, a guy, because he's still, pretty conventional, except for he shoots about 4 threes a game. He's down that block.
Right.
But he's like a Capella, right? He's a
right.
Now, if they got him to be as good as Capella, I think that you could win a title with a really good version of Capella on your team.
Yeah. Look, I think if I were on that coaching staff, what I would be saying is, develop an 8 to 10 foot jump shot. Develop a hook shot. Just be able to shoot from a space where you can't jump up and dunk the ball. Be a little bit of an offensive threat. But most encouragingly for me is the fact that he has started to address his horrific fouling problem. The guy was just, because he's trying to block everything, he was fouling out of games all the time, or at least getting into foul trouble and having to sit down. But this guy's in the top, I think, 5 in blocks. Where is he in blocks? And he's only playing 18 and change a game. He's averaging 2.4. I think the leader is averaging 2.7 with 10 minutes more per night.
Yeah. Well, here's the per 36 you were talking about is 4.5 blocks. But
that's gone down. That was up.
It was up before. Okay. And he's only playing per game. Less than 19 minutes a game, which is sort of this tank mode thing. It's weird in a different setting when they realize that you can't, tanking might not actually work the way they think it works. he'd be playing 30 minutes a game and just developing even faster. That's what's weird to me is like, the way this is still going. I just feel like we're in a weird time in our existence.
And that gets me to sort of Fizz and the rotations. There are some aspects I want to believe in Fizz. I want to buy into it, right? Because there's a lot of people who are like, finally New York has a guy who knows how to build young talent. I just don't get his obsession with Moutier. And part of me is like, what are you doing, man? Mm-hmm. Like, we don't want to be re-signing Moutier. Moutier should be playing 15 to 20 minutes a night, Like, as soon as he's back and healthy again, I think you throw Frank in the starting lineup and you just go, you're starting every game until the end of the season. Let's figure out what we have.
I agree. And although Moutier, it's funny, he was the king of like the mid-range pull-ups. He's driving. It's not even like floaters. These are like old school. You pull up, hang in the air for a second, and shoot the 18 or 15 footer. He was making them. Like I was there on Sunday and on Tuesday, and it was like I kept looking at the guys I was with who were other coaches, and we're kind of looking at each other, going, "Okay, like I guess this is a thing. He can do that." But there's decision-making issues. He's not really like a point guard you'd want, as a starter. So yeah, so your fear basically is that he's going to get enough stats in the way he's playing that they're going to be forced
that they're going to talk themselves into him. You know what I mean? That they're pot committed to him because they've just given him so much playing time. I think you got to look. I think at this point, I would say you got to establish whether or not Dennis Smith Jr. and Frank can play together, alternating 1 and 2 depending on the matchup. You let Frank take whoever is more of an offensive threat on defense, and let's see what Dennis Smith Jr. He's got a change of scenery. He had a couple of big games in his first week or two as a Knick. Let's see what's worth keeping. I think Trier is worth keeping. Mm-hmm. We got him signed to a great contract for next year. But don't it's like I go back to the contract that we we gave what's his name, who we cast off, the kid that looked like a boy band member. Why am I spacing his name?
It's a good description, but
you know what I'm talking about? The guy with the floppy hair, the guard.
Oh, you mean Baker?
Ron Baker, the touchdown maker. Yeah, they gave him like $9 million. Like, what were you thinking? And now he's not even is he even in the league right now? I
don't know.
So I just don't want to see them go, hey, we got a lot of money. Let's throw a 2 or 3 year contract at Moutier. I just don't see it.
Right. I mean, exactly. They can't afford to pay him. I mean, maybe $8 million, $9 million is where they should be paying him. But yes, the worry could be he gets to about 15 points a game, 4 or 5 assists. Oh, look at this, and they give him like 15 or something.
Right, and defensively, which it's all sort of anchored to me in the enigma of Frank. Like, what is this kid? You know what I mean? Because there were flashes of defensive brilliance this year. A lot of Knicks fans, myself included, kind of hang our hopes on, what's wrong in New York with having a defense-first, pass-first point guard. But then this year, I think he's taken some steps backwards on defense. He has like almost historical inefficiency in his shot. And whether, is this is it in his head? You know what I mean? Is this a Markelle Fultz kind of what's wrong with you? Is it physical or mental thing?
That is an interesting question because he doesn't look like he came out of nowhere, right? He hadn't even played at the top tier in Europe when they drafted him, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So, he was already in over his head to begin with, and obviously they talk about, I don't like using the term confidence, but he was certainly, that was a struggle for him. He didn't have anything to build on top of that. But you're right. I've seen a little bit, but I've seen a lot of issues where he's just like, this just might not be for him. But there is something there, right? There is, and I like the little bit I've seen, but I don't know if he's getting trained that well. I don't know who's working with him on his shot. We keep seeing this time and again in the NBA where guys they're working on their shots, but like they're not being trained properly and they're not shooting it.
Right.
They're training to miss.
I think you got him on a rookie deal, right? Now you've missed the window to sell high on him. Yeah, right? You could have done that maybe at the beginning of the year based on his defensive prowess from last year. He did have some lockdown games.
Right.
But that's gone. The mystique of it is gone. And at this point, for the price, I think you got to say, hey, we got another season to develop this guy before we just wholesale try to get, a second-round pick for him.
March Madness is upon us, and it's another huge month in sports across the NBA and NCAA. The tournament is where all the action is happening, and you don't want to miss any of it. So there is only one place to go, betonline.ag. Support us by going to clnsmedia.com/win and use promo code CLNS50 for a 50% sign-up bonus. You can go online or use your mobile phone to sign up today at betonline.ag and try in-game live betting where you can participate in all the action with every play. That's clnsmedia.com/win and promo code CLNS50. betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Now, here's the other problem here, because in the background, because we have to talk about Alonzo Trier, I want a little bit more. But, we're also talking about this notion of what's happening in the offseason. Are they really going to, or do they really think that KD is going to sign? Do they really think that Kyrie is going to sign?
I think some of that depends on ping pong balls, right? I mean, I think if the Knicks, somehow land 4th or 5th in the draft, it might be less appealing than if, boom, Zion. You know what I mean? I think that is a factor. I mean,
okay.
Everybody likes to say, well, the Knicks know something's up. You don't give up Porzingis and look, $70 million in cap space. It's an historical number, right? The team with the next most has 45. We're almost doubling up the amount of cap space. Mm-hmm. My fear is that they're going to end up who is going to be the Amari Stoudemire this year? You know what I mean? But if you win the draft, I think you do have a chance of pulling away a Kyrie or a Kevin. Some of it obviously depends on the Celtics' ability to swing a trade for Anthony Davis and whether or not Anthony Davis wants to re-sign with Boston. There's a lot wrapped up in that situation. That has to play out a number of ways before you could really say a guy as mercurial as Kyrie is destined to come. But I think that there is a weirdly rational case for saying, if you're KD, and assuming they go on and win another championship this year, how many rings do you need to get when it's not your team before you go, I've done this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And maybe I want to go play in the Mecca, and I want to build my brand, and I want to take 27 shots a night. I just want to go, and I'm going to win the scoring championship by 8 points this year.
Right. I still don't think he leaves. I think someone else has to come with him to go to New York anyway, even though he clearly wants to be the man. I will say this. Kyrie is there. He's halfway there. I think he's leaving Boston. It doesn't sound like he's going to stay there. It doesn't sound like anyone likes, playing with him or whatever that's going on. So he's out the door. The only question is where he's going to go. So it's starting to swirl a little bit there. And I agree. I think that the Zion thing is really intriguing to someone like KD, who a massive amount of talent and energy and excitement about that. It could really spark something for him. I guess the other question is KD leaving Golden State?
I mean, it seems like a lot of people think it's a foregone conclusion. Even if you're not reading into things like who's a KD's business manager tweeted earlier this year, I'm gonna run the Knicks one day, and people were like, oh, it's a done deal. But I think if you were to take a straw poll of KD's teammates off the record, they would go, I think he's out. Yeah. You know what I mean? I just don't, I think that if you're reading the tea leaves, you got to go, how much longer why ride the Golden State dynasty into the ground? Why not get your one last massive contract and be the man? I think anybody who really knows basketball would have to say, you even get to the finals as a Knick. That is the equivalent to another ring in Golden State.
Yeah, no,
for legacy.
Well, can't you text Steph right now and ask him what they're saying?
He's, he's changed his number. He's not returning.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
well, maybe we'll get it for you. So Alonzo Trier, he had a move on Tuesday against the Magic, where he comes down the court on the left side, goes left to right behind the back,
Yeah.
and then into a spin
360
move,
spin, yeah.
and then inside hand finish, and maybe even like an and one, I think, off of all of
Yeah,
that.
it was an and one.
And I literally, after the game, I asked him if he had washed his hands because it was so filthy that I had to make sure before I touched him that I could touch him. Because I don't know I've ever seen anything like that. And I asked him, I said, are you like repping that move over and over again to work on? He goes, no. He's like, my eyes were up. And I've worked on behind the back before, and I've worked on my spin move before, and it's just sort of, you can put these things together like a jazz musician, I guess, if enough training. And I was just like, I don't know. I mean, because I want to get in the gym right now and get your son out there and work on that move.
Dude, it was one of those things where you're like, was that just a happy accident? Was that like I hit the B spin move button at the right time and I can't replicate it? But the thing that I like about Trier is he is super, like, I don't think he has yet to take 20 shots in a game this season.
Okay.
So, like the other night, he had like, another 20-point game on like, 9 shots. He's getting it, last night or whatever, he got to the line like 9 times. Mm-hmm. So, if he can continue to do that, and if that is your third or fourth option, then you can really start to feel good about your offense, And then I would also point out that, and again, small sample size, I'm not objective, all disclaimers. However, after the trade, after we've gotten rid of Timmy and who was the other guy that we passed off, another point guard? I can't believe I'm getting old, man. I'm forgetting all these people.
Well, it's not going to be, your buddy Ron Baker we're talking about.
No, it's not Ron Baker. But it was we part of the package was we sent another point guard. Look up who we traded for in the KP trade. But the combination. Oh, well, first of all, Cantor. We got rid of Cantor. So since Cantor and Timmy are gone, since the trade, we've jumped up to like top 10 in defense.
Oh, okay.
Our defensive rating has gotten much better. And you got like efficient rotation players. Courtney Lee. Thank you very much. Efficient rotation players like Dotson, like tenacious, low volume, team playing, defensive minded guys
who can stroke the three. By the way, he can. I mean, he's a 3-and-D, a little bit shorter than you'd want, but like he was getting into it. He almost got into a fight with DeRozan.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like this. Who is this guy?
Right.
And by the way, he didn't even do anything. DeRozan was just kind of getting frustrated, but like it started, quit pushing me, man, kind of thing. So, this guy, he's a revelation to me. I hadn't really seen him play, and terrific, tough guy.
So getting rid of, Cantor, by the way, in terms of real plus minus, has essentially been a negative on every team he's ever been on except his second year in the league, like 2012, 2013.
Look at you bringing out the
and Timmy was like, the combination of having them on the court, we were like a minus 14, Yeah. So getting rid of those guys has helped us. The thing that I really worry about, and I still have faith, but like I am tired of seeing 4 for 14 in the stat line for Kevin Knox. Like it is his offense is horrific in terms of efficiency, and it's starting to freak me out a little.
I liked what I saw. He's a throwback, right? I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Actually, he does take 5 threes a game, according to 4.8, according to this. And he's hitting 33%. But when the 2 games that I watched live, I don't know if I saw him take more than a 1 or 2. And it's almost like this mid-range game going to the hoop strong. There's something there. There's something. This is his first year to build upon at 19.
Right.
I'm taking that every dime, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, it is, again, I go back to like all the physical talents are there and he needs to be developed properly. I just don't want to see him become a Timmy Hardaway, inefficient volume shooter that isn't playing great defense. I mean, that's like the nightmare is the recession into that kind of a player.
Fair enough. And that leash is probably going to be pretty short where, going into next year, he's going to have to be able to put up or shut up. Again, we don't know what's going to happen because if KD shows up and whatever, oh, okay, all of a sudden maybe he's your seventh man.
Right.
He's gone from your third best player to your seventh best player, and maybe that works for you with Zion around there. So if the perfect scenario, okay, let's go over that real quick. The perfect scenario is they get the number one pick in Zion. KD says, "I'm out and I'm coming to New York." Kyrie's like, "I'll do that."
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have who do you have? You have Hardaway. I'm sorry, you have Dennis Smith Jr. You have Kyrie and KD.
Right.
Zion. You have
Mitchell Robinson, Trier, Dotson. The guys that we have under contract there aren't a whole lot of guys under contract for next season. So, and you got Frank as a potential you put that scenario together, and if Frank turns into anything, it's great.
Yeah.
If he turns into a second unit backcourt stopper,
sure,
it's great.
And they'll get that veteran minimum guy, maybe Kurt Thomas is probably still available,
right?
That kind of guy.
Yeah, Kenyon Martin comes out of retirement.
Yeah.
I saw him at a Knicks practice earlier, and I went, "Oh dear God, what's happening?"
So you get something like that. Now that team wins the East, doesn't it?
Well, see, here's the problem: is after the Tobias Harris trade.
Oh, by the way, that's who you're getting, right? Do you realize that? They're not going to get Kevin Durant. They're going to get Tobias Harris.
Well,
that's his Meyer Stoudemire, right?
That's right. That was but now with this trade, and him in Philly, I would imagine they want to lock that up, right?
Right. Well, they have a decision to make between him and then Jimmy Butler. Or both. I don't know if they can do both, right?
I mean, that's sort of like, Tobias Harris is sort of, to me, he is the guy that is, if the 20 and 10 a night bar is your A level, he's like an A minus, or a heavy B plus. He's efficient. And Jimmy Butler's just a disaster, man. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a little biased, but I just go, super talented guy, absolute locker room cancer. I mean, what he did to Tibbs and that Minnesota team. Why would anyone that? Was my fear. Was we're gonna end up signing Jimmy Butler, who's gonna come in and and look at KD and go, why are you shooting so much? You know
right.
what I mean?
Right. Well, by the way, we already had that in the background. Speaking of Fizdale, the word in the street was that he was really, really rough with Marc Gasol. I'm going to motivate this guy. I'm going to light a fire under his ass. I'm going to be in his face. And that, I could have told you that was the mistake.
Right.
And that supposedly was a big contributing factor why he got kicked out of there. So, you have to imagine there might be some of that hovering over as well. I mean, I know with Trier, he shot a ton of threes in college. He could be stroking threes. He doesn't hardly shoot any of those. And I think that his take on it is I'm a rookie. I'm scared. I don't want to
right.
rock.
I don't want bad attention.
Yeah, I'm just trying to blend in here, whatever. I'm it's impossible for that dude to blend in. He is just too good.
Yeah.
And in fact, if they would have played him more, they would have won more games. I'm convinced because he just lights it up like that. By the way, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, in that Jamal Crawford way. But he actually does give out on defense. There is something there. He's undersized, but nonetheless. So yes, so there's a lot of moving parts here, but even still, because we have to think about what Kawhi is going to do, because if Kawhi leaves Toronto, then without question, the scenario we described, the best case scenario for the Knicks, I don't know. I mean, the Celtics are kind of imploding here.
Look, AD is not out of the question for the Knicks. There is literally a. Because say the Knicks get the second pick in the draft, and then all of a sudden they're packaging. I really look. Right. As long as I know other teams can put together better offers, my point being, if AD is saying, here are the 2 places or 3 places I want to play, and New York is on that list, then they're in the game, right? Okay. I just feel like there are, let's talk about the people that they could, because there's probably 4 or 5 max players that are in contention for the Knicks, right? That are complete free agents.
Okay.
There's Kyrie, there's KD, there's Kawhi, AD is under contract, but is clearly forcing his way out.
There's
Clay, right? Although I don't see that happening. Clay seems like he's staying in Golden State.
I always figured he would be the first guy to leave, honestly.
Really?
But again, that's everybody I've ever talked to and even been around team, they all say no, he would never leave. He loves it, whatever. But I don't know. Something about the way he plays to me would be like, you know what, F this. I want to get some more shots. I want to be the man.
He could be the James Harden of Golden State, who's just like, dude, I'm ready I'm ready for starring role.
Right.
I would just, and I know people are laughing at me talking about we could get it. My point is this: if you either or both win the draft or get KD, all bets are off. Like, the Garden is that attractive, and if you got a premier guy like KD, an arguable top 2 or 3 guy in the league, you just don't know in this sort of New Jack City star era who's going to want to go, well, hell, I'll go to New York and play with him and take all their money. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah. No, there's no question that would be a big lure, and that's what happens now in the NBA. They're all who lures more people now, and we could shit on LeBron if you want because he's not luring anybody. He's not a magnet anymore.
I mean, the jurisdiction, the statute of limitations ran out hard on that. It was like Kyrie Irving, bailed on that, and everybody was like, how could he be leaving the best player in the world? And virtually silently, all the other players in the league went, hey man, good move.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, KD called it toxic, and he danced around the toxic, notion of that. But I think, however you want to apply that word, it's there, and we're seeing it now. I mean, it's got to be. It's a bad look for him when he gets scored on, and he's like gesturing to his teammates, like, "Hey, why didn't you stop him?" and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I think it's. My question is this about the torque that LeBron puts on a franchise in terms of, I've decided I don't like Luke Walton, and we're hearing these rumors that Luke Walton's out. I'm not a big Luke Walton defender, but the point is, wherever he goes, he's like, let me explain to you the way we're going to run this franchise now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Lakers signings preseason were just absolutely ridiculous, considering the fact that the guys that they let go of signed for a fraction of the money than the guys that they signed were historically bad choices to put around LeBron.
You didn't think Beasley and Rondo and Stevenson and JaVale were all going to be like a great...
I mean, that was like a fantasy football team run by the idiot in your office, right? So now my question is, how does this play out? Because I don't think, does LeBron have a player option, or he's committed, right? Isn't he committed?
Yeah.
So it's not, what can he do?
Yeah, he is doing what he's doing, which is sort of like, you know what? I'm going to have a nice long off season. I'm going to relax and rebuild and refresh. First time in 10 years, whatever it's been. No, he's never not made the playoffs, I don't think, or at least it was a long time ago. So he might,
maybe his rookie year.
Yeah, so he might embrace this notion of like, let's have an early off season and just kind of, I need a rest.
Yeah, but it ain't going to change next year.
Right.
Like it is so bad right now, and the lack of shine on the idea of playing with him, I just don't see that guy signing up for a year of missing the playoffs and then 3 consecutive 7th place Western Conference finishes.
Yeah, I mean we all I think we've kind of forgotten Michael's run in Washington at the end. But there's always that fear that that's what we're going to remember more. I think that's faded away a lot, but
But Mike was also 107 when that happened. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I just that was true. 2 seasons, one of which he put up a double nickel on my beloved New York Knicks.
Yeah.
But I just don't. I can't see LeBron at this stage of his abilities resigning himself to being, a first round and out team for the remainder of his prime.
And it has to be concerning that guys like Paul George, who had dreamed his whole life of playing for the Lakers, didn't even give him an interview and just re-signed right away once they found out that LeBron was going there. So we'll have to see. Maybe, who knows? Right. Maybe
right. And by the way, let me just make the point: how long does Magic Johnson have? He exerts a lot of pressure on a franchise. There's people who say that, they don't like his style of management. He's hot and cold. He was all behind Luke, and then he wants him out, and Jeannie's got to save him. I mean, maybe is one to scapegoat people and point fingers. You know, he's got a big hand in these signings.
Oh, yeah.
He's got some egg on his face. Who wants to come and deal with that?
And there was a big ESPN article the other day about, you know, maybe how Pelinka didn't have a lot of the relationships he needed to have as a GM that you normally would have if you had been an assistant for years and developed that way. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, but it's interesting to see. Maybe I don't know if you're gloating, but to see another storied franchise kind of falling in the hole that the Knicks had fallen into?
To me, it is shocking that essentially every premier article in the last 10 days written on every basketball website is, holy crap, can you believe how bad the Lakers are?
Yeah. I'm actually going to do a video on, you want to know the title?
Sure.
Breaking news. Why no one wants to play with LeBron. So it's a good title. I got to actually come up with the reasons, but I think it's an interesting thing. But remember, the Lakers, you know, this is how they've been. Like, I think it's almost like you wake up and you realize the public school system sucks, when in fact it's been happening for years and years.
Right.
You know, the Lakers, they have really been struggling for how many years? Been 4 or 5 years now.
Look, you can go back to the decision to give Kobe Bryant whatever it was, $60-some-odd million for his last 2 seasons.
There's a video.
And let him shoot 32 times a game or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed like they were making emotional decisions on contracts that year.
Right. This will be the 6th year if they don't make it this year, that they don't make the playoffs. So you have an entire generation of kids who think the Clippers are better than the Lakers. Right.
Wow.
Imagine if you were like 5 years old, you know, and now you're like 12 now.
Yeah.
That's all you know.
Pat Beverly just came out and said the Clippers wanted more than the Lakers.
Yeah, and we love Pat Beverly.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, I think you have to go to your next podcast recording or something.
I do. I have to go talk smack about the Knicks someplace else. I have to go be irrationally optimistic about our young core.
Well, listen, I hate to see you go, but I hope maybe we can do this again and talk more.
It was a lot of fun, man. Thank you for humoring me. Good to see you, brother.
Hey, absolutely. And don't forget, really quickly, is there anything we can follow you on, see you on doing right now?
Yeah, you can see me on this season's Halloween Baking Championship on Food Network.
All right. I love baking. I love Halloween. I love you. It's a triple crown right there.
I think it might be the longest title in the history of television.
All right. Well, this one is not, but I thank you for coming on the show. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBall Breakdown, not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, John?
I am.